Morning,
Good
Gary.
morning. Good morning, Honorable Senator. How are you?
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Happy New Year to you.
I missed you.
Oh,
I
it's
missed you
filled
too.
of love.
Did you celebrate an anniversary recently?
Yes. Yes.
17 years, right?
17 years. Yes.
Congratulations. You and your beautiful wife.
Steve did not attend. Steve was absent.
Yeah, I couldn't make it that day.
Well, you didn't invite me.
I
They
couldn't make
stopped
it.
talking to me. I don't know.
I stopped talking to you?
I didn't stop talking. I didn't stop talking to you, and they didn't invite you.
How could you say I stopped talking to you?
Oh,
God, it's the big old love only flowing this morning, boy. You're hearing it.
How you could say I stopped talking to you? Yesterday you accused me of blacklisting you now till you say I stopped talking to you. How I stopped talking to you, Gary? How?
Oh, God.
The last
There's love in the
conversation
house
we
this
had,
morning.
the last conversation was a very amicable conversation, which was about mid-December, I do believe, right?
Yeah.
Where you just come off the show and you didn't like how you were treated on the show, but you were very civil about it. You just said that you thought you weren't treated well on the show, and I said, well, I appreciate your feedback. Wasn't that the conversation generally?
Yep. And there was, but yet, when people say, okay, I thank for your view, but you would have never stated that. What happened in that show is that I saw that I was in a joint select committee. I was cross-examined by every single thing I said, which was a fact. And what was interesting is that that was about me stating that a government gave me $40 million, put it into the police account, directed me who to hire and to make them SRPs. And then you said that, well, I need to bring evidence. And the fact that, which I love with politics in Trinidad and Tobago, you say that, but you will never ask Heinz, Stewart, or Rowley. You keep speaking about corruption with firearms. Why don't you show the evidence? You will never ask that. You know why? You know why? Because a prime minister appoints a president who appoints senators. But you will never ask that same question, Paul. I dare you one. Keith Rowley for 2 years has stated corruption.
I promise you, the next time I have Minister Hines or the Prime Minister on, I will ask them that correct question directly.
And that is all I ask, a level playing field. Right? Because
and they injuncted from talking about that issue.
No, but I could still ask them if they injuncted, and they could say they injuncted. So I could still ask them.
Because remember, right? I have made a statement that you gave me $40 million, you put it into your account, you told me who to hire and to make them SRPs. They have never denied it. On the other side, but they haven't denied it, yet I must show you the evidence. But on the other side, they have lied and said massive well-oiled criminal industry, massive, lots of corruption. Gary was bringing in parts for weapons to change it into automatic. And then I said, Rowley, Hines, you are blatant liars. But you wouldn't ask them. But Gary has now challenged you and said you're lying. Can you show us the evidence? Never asked. The media will never ask them.
Our question this morning was, do you agree with Gary Griffith that gangs should be treated as terrorists? Now, we had quite a large response to the poll. When they repeat the results, please.
25 said yes, and 4 said no.
Yeah. Now, among those who also weighed in, Gary, are those who want you to elaborate on what you meant by that. Now, I read the newspaper Express article that said that you meant a change to the Anti-Terrorism Act. Could you expand on that, what you mean for me, please?
Yeah, sure. So there's an Anti-Terrorism Act, and sometimes people will find ways why something cannot be done, because you will look and say, well, there's something in the act that may not allow it. And all you have to do is to make the slight amendments, because the interesting thing with the Anti-Terrorism Act, I don't think it ever defines who's a terrorist. But by and large, a terrorist is someone who has an intention to commit serious harm or death, especially to civilians. And then there's a slight line that can state with a political aim. And by and large, what we've seen here with the gangs is that what has happened is that it is making it very difficult for the government to govern. You can virtually make a country unstable. It is affecting investment, it is affecting business in Trinidad and Tobago. The whole nation is under siege. So those things can be considered a terrorist act. If you recall what happens in the United States, they said, why it is only when it is religious persons do something and commit harm. But when another person in the United States has an assault weapon and kills 17 people, you don't refer to that person as a terrorist. Indirectly, they are internal terrorists. So in the Anti-Terrorism Act, it actually says it's about the act means that committed which is likely to cause loss of human life or serious bodily harm, damage to property, and prejudice to national security, which is basically what the gangs have been doing. And there are other parts of the act that shows about anyone who participates as an accomplice, anyone commits a terrorist act by directly or indirectly influencing persons who organize or direct officers, directly individuals, persons who might make available financial support. So what that the anti-terrorist act has never really been used, and it is there for the taking. Ecuador just did it recently. So by doing this, you don't just target the guy with the 35 with the automatic weapon, but his core gang member, the person who is in charge of the gang, the persons who import the weapons, and even the politicians who sometimes give these gangs $5 million state contracts to build a box ring that really costs 50,000, and they use the profit to buy more sophisticated assault weapons. So if we use the Anti-Terrorism Act to have gang members referred to as terrorists, what it does now, it can allow. I remember when we arrested a man with 4 assault rifles. That means that he could have killed 105 people in 3 seconds. And the court gave this man a $50,000 bail the very next day. So because he's a gang member, taking away that anti-gang legislation, it is not working. It is a waste of time. Using the Anti-Terrorism Act, you allow the gang members to be recognized as terrorists. It is now 25 years in prison, as well as any fellow person who was with him, anybody who provided the weapon, any politician who gave him the contract that allowed him to be able to build his armada, they are all now liable to 20 years in prison. And further, it now allows the defense force access to move in to operate in an operational manner, not the present cosmetic one that we have, which is why you have a soldier and a policeman walking down the street. 2 security guards could do the same. By doing this, it now triggers the need where the president under Defense Force chapter 1401, paragraph 4, where it gives the president the authorization to put them on active service. Active service means that Defense Force can now be highly operational. The Defense Force is not a cosmetic tool just to have a soldier walking with a police officer. It is similar to what is being done in Jamaica right now. It is known as the Zone of Special Operations, where the soldiers are now being used. Gentlemen, we have 5,000 members of the Defense Force staying in camp. The last time they've been used was 2011. Before that was 1990. So
I'm not necessarily against what you're saying, but one of the questions that will arise is that, and I think you kind of clarified it. You said the Defense Force will have additional powers under that. If that act is amended, that's what you're saying. But the same law enforcement police who can't seem to effectively operationalize gathering evidence for gang legislation would have to be a part of that. How do you deal with that issue?
Right, sure, because the police officers are not trained for this type of environment. You would have seen it in 1990, not knocking the police officers, but every police station was abandoned. I was the youngest officer in the Defense Force at the time. I was the one all through hours in the night, all the stations we won, because the police are not trained for that type of armed conflict. Granted that in 2020, under the situation with the 150 men coming down into Port of Spain with equipment to destroy Port of Spain, thankfully, because of my operational military training, we were able to prevent it. And the Defense Force remained in camp because there's a reluctance for the Defense Force to come out, because under their role and function, you don't want them to be in a position where something happens and then they are now blamed and said, who gave, they don't have a get out of jail free card. The Anti-Terrorism Act makes these individuals now enemies of the state rather than just a criminal. By making you an enemy of the state, it allows the Defense Force the opportunity now to get in there and be fully operational, similar to what Jamaica is doing. They are making full use of their Defense Force. We have over 5,000 still remaining in camp on standby. How could 150 men walk down into Frederick Street to destroy Port of Spain and you're on standby? And I know how to utilize the police to be doing army work in local.
How would you respond to those who suggest that's militarizing the country?
It's not, because the country is under siege. And again, that is why the people who will say that they are sympathetic to criminals, they do not want the gangs to be pegged back, they do not want them to be neutralized. Remember, gentlemen, crime is big business. There are people who benefit tremendously by what happens now with gang warfare. Whether it be certain politicians, whether it be people in the security sector, whether it be people who benefit from illegal drugs, human trafficking. So gang warfare, gang activity is big. What I am doing is to neutralize this once and for all, putting an end to it. We are trying to play with kid gloves, and the gangs, as I said, if one man has an assault weapon, that is 35 people that could be killed in 3 seconds. So the only way that this could be done is to fight fire with fire. The 7,000 police officers, the 5,000 members of the Defense Force, 12,000 coming in there. We did it with 100 under the Special Operation Response Team. Remember, just 100 had the gang members scampering. They were afraid. Now they are brazen. They are shooting in broad daylight.
Well, what you just suggested there, if we had to take that, is that an effectively run law enforcement agency can do it. Because if you said you did it with 100 SWAT officers under the police service without the Anti-Terrorism Act being amended, it can be done if the police service is operating effectively. Why not focus on that?
Because to do that, I militarized the police service. I took an arm of the police service and made them very military, and that is where people, you notice,
that's a very interesting statement. You just said you militarized the police service. There are many people who would frown on that.
Well, yeah, because they were, as I said, the people who frown on it are those who support criminals. Everybody was pleased with SWAT. When you heard about Gary's boys, a few moments later, no criminal could come and brandish a firearm
Should a police service be militarized when you have different arms for different reasons?
No, because it is all over the world. You ever heard about something called SWAT, SWAT? It is a military unit. All over the world, you have an arm that is very, very tactical, very operational. They are probably trained even more than the army.
So you're using the word militarized figuratively.
Yeah. Along the words of being highly tactical.
Just want to clarify, because you're saying I militarize the police service.
Well, no, but if you bring 100 members of SWAT and they are part of the police service and they are highly trained, highly tactical to deal with a war, you have basically militarized an arm of the police service. But as I said, all over the world, every single police service has that. You must have that highly tactical trained unit to be there for that first line. If it reaches a point of 3,000 gang members, you can't expect, again, even though SWAT did it. But notice what happened. As soon as I left, they dismantled SWAT because of an incident involving 2 persons. But you have the IATF, the GB, the Northern Division that were involved and still involved in investigations with several people being killed, and they have not touched them. So it shows that this was a deliberate concern because, as I said, crime is big business. It is not just for the guy in the 3/4 pants and the white vest. It involves sometimes the guys in the shirt and tie and the suit because they benefit from it. So there were certain people who had an issue with what I did. However, it worked. It pegged back criminals. Public trust and confidence in the police went up to 59%. It was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. It played a part, and that is what is required now. Bringing the defense force in, not just utilizing them in a cosmetic way by walking with a soldier and a policeman on the street. Jamaica, they presently do it, as I mentioned, that zone of special operations. So you take what Ecuador has presently done, utilizing the Anti-Terrorism Act, and you take what Jamaica have done, using the zone of special operations, and you merge it to come up with something. My point being, gentlemen, quickly, is just to show that things can be done, things can be achieved. It is not talking about a state of emergency. It is talking about getting the job done and thinking out of the box. The Anti-Terrorism Act, the Zone of Special Operations are 2 simple things that I would have immediately ignited as a security minister. But because of fear, failure, incompetence, or even feeling sympathetic to criminals, it seems that this administration will not do it.
When you say Zone of Special Operations in Jamaica, with regard to the army being utilized by Jamaica, is it that they give army officers the power of arrest? Is that part of their zone of operations? Or is it that they have to accompany police officers like what we see in Trinidad?
Well, it gives them full authority to be totally operational, whereas it's not a situation of them just going on a joint patrol with the police, and that is the difference. The powers of arrest, again, that is when you start getting into a state of emergency. The soldiers are there as a support element for the police to deal with internal security. So even though they go into a zone of special operations, there still will be police presence. But the difference is now you can have about 20 soldiers raiding somewhere, but there's just one police officer there who will do the actual arrest. So now the police officer becomes the support element, whereas before it would be the other way around. You'll have lots of police officers and a few soldiers that come and jump in a vehicle under the IATF to patrol somewhere, to take a walk down Frederick Street or St. James. That is not what we are talking about. This here is a system that can be used with 5,000 persons there, ready to take on these gangs, and if not arrest them, neutralize them.
Gary, how do you respond to the proposal by the UNC opposition of calling a state of emergency?
Right. Okay, so let me clarify that quickly. the political scientist and the anti-crime talks, she and again, many times people are emotional, and she said that every time she hears a gunshot, she says, call a state of emergency. The crowd applauded. The political leader of the UNC, the opposition leader, she said, listen, a state of emergency, it worked in reducing crime. So fact, it is true. There was a massive reduction in crime because, I mean, if you use a state of emergency and a curfew specifically to deal with criminal activity, then crime would go down. That is not what happened in the last state of emergency. That was something for public health regulation. So it's two different things. But in that situation, it was a fact crime was reduced. What she's saying, however, is that in this present circumstance with this administration, nothing else is working. They have not worked out any policies, new tools, technology, units. In fact, they've been dismantling everything. So if it is we've reached this point where it is the bloodiest the country has ever seen, the country has never been so fearful. It seems that the last resort is the state of emergency. And it is really and truly a last resort. I am stating that in the incoming government, the state of emergency is likewise, additionally, it is still going to be a last resort because you would have seen what happened in 2014. It was the highest reduction in serious crime in 31 years without a SOE. You'd have seen my last year, it was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. So without trying to utilize a state of emergency to reduce crime. So things can actually work. There are a lot of different tools, policies, units that can work. So this is not about Kamala Prasad stating that when she gets in government, there's going to be a state of emergency. That's not it. That is the last resort. Let me quickly add. I know the first thing people will say is that, but the last time you all did a state of emergency, you all locked up hundreds of young men. Let me clarify. That state of emergency was called based on law enforcement intelligence heads coming to the National Security Council and informing us that there was a clear and present danger and there was a direct plan to destabilize the country through mass killings and assassinations. The government, they must adhere to that type of advice. Failure for them to do so can cause a whole country to collapse. So the government adhered to the recommendation by the law enforcement agencies to call the state of emergency. If the police operated in a manner not becoming of police officers and arrested people unlawfully, that is not the fault of the government. The government called the state of emergency based on the advice of the law enforcement agencies.
Well, back up a bit, Gary, because at the point in time, the law enforcement agency, I would imagine, would have involved a commissioner of police and his deputy.
Correct.
Who at the time were not in the country when this was done.
No, come on, man. When they're just like saying that Keith Rowley leaves the country, there's no prime minister.
No,
there's always a commissioner of police. So okay, get off that one.
So I'm asking, no, but a matter of a state of emergency, I don't know that a state of emergency could be called and a prime minister not around. I'm asking this in light of the fact that what you just said as the reason why it was done back in 2011. You said it was as a result of intelligence from law enforcement agencies. In my opinion, and I'm sure in several other people's opinion, law enforcement agencies involves a commissioner of police.
But when they're, what is it? So is it a substantive commissioner of police or an acting commissioner of police?
No. Well, I would imagine the commissioner of police didn't leave not too long before that.
No. Listen. There's a saying you can't be half pregnant. The person who was the commissioner of police at the time was the acting commissioner of police. If he is no longer there, he is replaced by an acting commissioner of police. So what you're trying to say is that
no, we had an actual substantive commissioner of police in Dwayne Gibbs at the point in time.
All right, okay, right.
And deputy commissioner, substantive, Mr. Iwatsky.
But the fact of the matter is just like saying that if the prime minister leaves the country, the acting prime minister does not have. If there's a clear and present danger, you don't sit down and twiddle your thumbs and wait for the substantive person to turn up. It does not work that way.
But at the point in time, if I remember, and I stand corrected on this, Mr. Gibbs was not aware at all.
Well, that is for you to see. If it is that there's an acting commissioner of police and he comes to the government with a recommendation immediately, it is not the role of the government to say, well, let's go up to the substantive commissioner of police and see what his view is. That is madness. It does not work that way. So let's be realistic here, because the man is the substantive. If I was the substantive commissioner of police and I go off to Ireland or whatever, and there's an immediate clear and present danger to destabilize the country, what it is that the government now must sit down and say, well, let's go to the substance. It doesn't work that way.
Well,
because
I'm not saying
acting commissioner of police, an acting commissioner of police has the exact authority.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But are you saying that an actual substantive commissioner of police would not be briefed?
Well, again,
I don't know that you would have appreciated that. That when you run out of the country for a week or so on a course or some conference, that something happens and they go to whoever was deputizing for you. Did you ever have a deputy?
On several occasions, if I had to go to conferences or whatever, and that would have been sometimes Harold Phillip, sometimes Hackshaw. So there would have been
thing, right? Okay, yeah. Right.
And the point is, immediately you have to make a decision. You are having a boardroom, you're having meetings that's taking place. So the last thing is, well, let's call it substantive to hear what he has to say. That is. I mean, come on, Wendell. The focus is that.
You see, you changing my words. You are saying he should be consulted to hear what he have to say. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it is very strange that as
soon as you leave the country, whether you're substantive or acting, the person has full control. They make the decisions because you are not there. So whether he in your view or your recommendation, there's a clear and present danger from intelligence agencies. The person who holds the chair makes the decision. If a commissioner goes on vacation, it is not for us to pick up. Well, Dwayne, what do you think about it, pal? What's your view? He doesn't know. There's a wealth of intelligence and information.
I'm presuming that there's a full briefing and handover to acting position. Right?
Exactly.
What I want to know, I want to go back to the issue of the gangs a bit, Gary, and if you could share with us what your experience was. I know you were very adamant about the inroads that the SWOT unit made. But what was your experience as commissioner regarding gangs and gathering evidence to hunt down, arrest, charge, and prosecute gangs in this country? Because the gangs are the issue, and you were a substantive commissioner for 3 years. We have a commissioner now, there was a commissioner before you, but we've had a gang problem for like 20 years in this country that's not improving. It is seemingly getting worse. But not seemingly, it's getting worse.
Oh, sorry, yes. You're correct. And when the issue took place, I said it constantly as commissioner of police, that when you play with filthy animals, you will get fleas. You can't continue to feed the animal in the hope that the animal would turn away. It started since 2006, and there was a point of no return.
No, but sorry to interrupt, but I'm talking specifically about the role of law enforcement in identifying, hunting down, gathering the evidence to secure successful prosecution in gangs. And what was your experience in that, and what were the challenges in that, if any?
Yeah, but all right, yeah. So I just segue to just quickly what I was alluding to is that because of the government giving gangs state contracts,
and that's the funding part and the financing.
No, but I want to show you the importance of this. I want to show you the importance. By doing that, it allows gangs the opportunity now to have so much funds that they would be able to pay off police officers, pay off certain other persons, and it made it difficult for the intelligence, because now you're getting in a situation where the gangs are so well funded because, as I said, $5 million contract to build a $50,000 box drain. They can now use these funds now to pay off the same agencies on the inside that will be able to tip off these same gangs. This is what they are picking up. This is what they are planning. This is what they are doing. And it made it very difficult, which is where my point has always been. You need to squeeze them. You don't go and feed the animal, because eventually they're going to bite you. The more funds you give them, the harder it is for the intelligence.
But wasn't the unit that you spoke about insulated from that in large respect?
Yeah.
If they were insulated from that, then what was the issue with that unit carrying out that function if they were insulated?
And it worked because they had their own intelligence unit separate and apart from the TTPS. And the same way it is that we were able to deal with putting an end to kidnapping by having one unit alone, because we found out police officers, like in Natalie Polony kidnapping, police officers were involved. So every time we were doing something, they were tipping off the other kidnappers. So that is what SWOT was. We had our own intelligence unit, and certain rogue elements in the police service were offended. So they started whispering to politicians, we need to get rid of SWOT, because that is what SWOT did. Just like SWAT that you will see in the United States. You have your own intelligence unit separate and apart from the TTPS. Not knocking the TTPS, but
how successful was your unit in in identifying and dealing with the gang issue?
Sorry, I didn't hear you because you interrupted me for the 5th time whilst I was speaking. What's that?
Oh God, we're going down that road again.
You just did it 5 times. So I didn't hear because whilst I was speaking, you interrupted me again.
Well, I will try not to do it again. I just want to know how successful was your group in dealing with that gang issue?
Yeah, and it was very successful because it started pegging back the gangs. It was known as predictive policing. Through the online reporting, through the police app, through the social media monitoring unit we had, through a unit that was actually monitoring what is known as the dark web that people may not be aware of, we were able to pinpoint and find out things that would have been taking place to put a hit on a prison officer, persons now collecting weapons to head to a certain area to kill certain persons. So SWAT would have been using that intelligence through the dark web, through the social media monitoring unit that we piggyback from NYPD, through the online reporting, through putting undercover officers, which we never had before. So I started putting police officers undercover. So that what Fitzgerald Hines is talking about, that was being done 2 years ago. We had officers that other officers would not have known that these guys were working undercover, and they were giving us information and tipping us off for us to be known what was known as predictive policing. So it did work. But then again, why do it? So that's why SWAT was shut down.
You know, Gary, I mean, I have 2 questions. One, when we spoke to Fitzgerald Hines earlier this week, he brought up the issue of air surveillance. Well, Paul had asked him about the issue about air surveillance, because when we talk about issues on the Power Breakfast show, and we hear a murder takes place X, and the criminals jumped into whatever vehicle and they escape, they must travel on particular roads. And there has to be a backup, in our opinion, of not only CCTV cameras, but air support. And now I know the air support unit was disbanded, but the TTPS and well, certainly Fitzgerald Hines indicated that they have drones. And I was talking to Wendell last night. Was it last night, Wendell?
Yeah.
And I was saying about drones. What when they say drones, what do they mean? Who is deploying the drone?
Yeah,
And who's controlling the surveillance
Richard,
of the drone?
Gary, don't interrupt the man now. Let him
Sorry, my bad.
Go ahead, Gary.
Right. So if you look at the dictionary of ministers and you have the word clueless, you'll see Fitzgerald Hines. That is probably one of the dumbest things. The man does not know. He is totally clueless. The drones that the TTPS have are the drones that you buy in Toys R Us. It are these type of drones that can actually go up. Now, I'm not saying that is not helpful, but you know, like you go in a volatile area, you could look at. But these are drones that are very limited in capacity. The drones that I made the request for would have been things that can turn night into day, that could go 3,000 meters above sea level, that can lock onto a license plate of a police vehicle, that can lock onto a vessel leaving Venezuela, coming into Trinidad, and you can now lock on, see the names, actually hear what is happening, lock onto when the drugs or the weapons get onto the vehicle, see which vehicle or what police vehicle is escorting them. Drones that can actually cover the whole of the borders between Trinidad and Venezuela, and that is even more effective than the vessels itself in the water, because the drones can actually move. Those things can stay up in the air for 24 hours. That is the type of drones that we were getting. What Fitzgerald Hines is speaking about that you have given to the police service are Toys R Us drones. You buy that in Toys R Us. And so he doesn't have a clue. That's what you speak about, Richard. Those are the type of drones that I made the request for. And I was able to get the funding for it because I was able to cut overtime corruption in the police service by $100 million per annum.
So where are those drones?
It was never approved because I left. But that is the type of drones that we require, Richard, not the drones. So for him to say we have drones, we don't. We have an air guard in Piarco with 500 members, no helicopter, no aircraft. They're doing nothing, waiting, twiddling their thumbs. We have a police service air unit using Toys R Us drones, when they should really get the type of drones that I just spoke about that can assist in traffic congestion. They can pinpoint what is causing the traffic. They can be able to.
So there are drones. So there are drones. We're not talking quality now, but there are drones.
Yeah, but anybody could have a drone. My 7-year-old nephew has a drone.
So our conversation last night went along the road of where are these drones located? Who is the drone controller?
Okay,
what do these drones do?
The senator has put up his hand.
I think he has to leave.
No, I just want to make sure that I asked to talk because I don't want to interrupt you. 5 times is too much already.
Yeah, but you interrupted me now, not Gary.
I can interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt Gary. No, I have to leave in 3 minutes to be very quick. I have another interview to do. But I just wanted to ask you, the UNC's anti-crime talks kicked off on Monday. I thought the first one was very successful.
But Gary's an NTA, yeah?
But he was a guest on it, okay?
Okay.
Right? What do you think can come out of those interfaces moving across the country?
Excellent question. It's exactly what I thought would have taken place when I offered to assist the Prime Minister early February, and he told me where to get to office. The same reason why Kamala Prasad did the same thing. This is a matter no longer about party cards. This is good versus evil. This is about us uniting, working as a team of law-abiding citizens who have political leaders and political parties, regardless of your political affiliation. We need all to work to come up with the proper tools, policies, and political will. So that is the important. Unfortunately, Keith Rowley, because of hate, bitterness, tobacco over Gary Griffith, he doesn't want to be involved, and the country will suffer. But at least at this time, we need to get the private sector involved. This is not politicians and government officials and members of parliament just coming up with crime plans. Is not the way. You need to be on the ground. You need to speak to your stakeholders. You need to hear their concerns. You need to hear their recommendations so that you can come up with the proper policy to ensure that we can peg back criminal elements. That being the value of those talks.
Thank you. I have to leave now. Yeah. I appreciate you being with us. Please don't be a stranger.
So we're going back to my original question, Gary. Where are these drones? Who are these drone controllers? What do these drones do? We ain't discussing the quality now, but there are drones. The minister said it. You confirmed that there are drones. Where are they? And how are they being used?
There's an air support unit in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and so they have drones. But as I said, there are certain drones that are used, like in Chicago. If you're in a volatile area, they will send the drones. They could send the drones over to see what is happening, and the drones could probably be shut down. So there are drones and there are drones. What Richard is speaking about is that if there's a situation with a killing somewhere, and then you have the National Operations Center, and you pinpoint a vehicle that has now been taken off heading down the road, the drones that you have could never deal with that. We are speaking about a drone that can immediately go up to 3 kilometers. And when you go up to 3 kilometers, you can have a span of dozens of kilometers on either side that you can lock on onto that vehicle, lock onto that license plate, see exactly what it's doing. That is it. What Richard is speaking about is that type of technology. So when I say, we have drones, the drones that we have could never do that. Those drones are something that you use your joystick and you pull up and you actually send it to something that's about a couple hundred meters away from where you are. That is not the drones immediately.
Well, Richard and I said they use it for the sports and family day and for the parade. So that's where our discussion went. But this was after a long evening, right? So we don't know if we were correct. Is that what the drones are being used for?
That air unit is very good. It's just that they need better quality. So, but I mean, I'll give you an example. If it is that somebody is in a volatile area or in a forested area and is a criminal with a firearm, you take the drone so you can see where he is, because you don't want to have officers going into that area where they could be killed. So that is the type of technology we had. The technology I was speaking about would be a drone, and we actually had it. We did the research. I went to the different places. The drone can actually lock onto a building. The police officer will have it on his arm, and he can actually see what is in the back of the building to know if it is going to be ambushed. That is the type of technology available. And as I said, those drones would be able to do 3 times more than any OPV, because the drones now, as I said, it could turn night into day. It's a covert operative, so you don't even know that it's monitoring you, not like the Goodyear blimp. So as I said, Patrick Manning had good ideas. It was just a little outdated. So instead of the Goodyear blimp, I was getting the drones. Instead of the SAUTT, I formed the National Security Special Operation Group as minister and the Special Operation Response Team. You notice the similar name? There was a reason for it. I saw the value of SORT. Instead of the OPVs, I saw the importance of the OPVs, but you don't spend $2.4 billion for 3 OPVs when you could get it for half the price in Israel, Colombia, and Korea, which is why I got the Diamond vessels, which should have been 12 vessels, to do the same thing the OPVs would have done for $1.2 billion.
Why would a change of commissioner of police stop the type of technology you are speaking about that you were putting in place for these drones and air support? Why would a change of commissioner of police change that? It just doesn't make sense.
But it did happen. The National Operations Center, the 999 unit, the Commissioner's Command Center, the Operation Command Center, the mobile scanners, the media monitoring unit, the gender-based violence unit that has now been watered down, the online reporting, the police app, the police SOS, Special Operation Response Team, the Emergency Response Patrol. They shut down everything. They removed everything. And again, it has to do with political pettiness. And also, there was a strong concern by the certain hierarchy in the police service. This is what Gary is bringing in to transform the police service. We are lucky with that. We're Gabardine, and we need to sit down in our place and know our business. I was bringing the police into the 21st century, which is what Dwayne was trying to do as well. And he got pushed back. They couldn't push me back because I understood the environment. So as soon as you started to give me pushback, I will send you on 2 years leave or whatever. As I did with Ola Christopher, because I realized she couldn't keep up with the pace of what I was doing. So
you sent Miss Christopher on leave?
2 years, one time, because she couldn't keep up. She couldn't keep up with the things that I was adhering to.
We never heard that before.
Well, you know now.
Richard?
No,
the man said he sent the current commissioner on leave for 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. She was on. She had listen. Ola Christopher is. This is not a knock. We've been knocking the woman. The woman she placed. Ola Christopher placed. And what I have a concern with.
Don't get us in trouble, Gary.
No. I have a concern about people criticizing female police officers, saying that a police service should not have female commissioners of police. Total nonsense. They were. I could speak about Archie and several others who were DCPs could easily match commissioners anywhere in the Caribbean.
So
this nonsense about somebody is feeling because she's a woman totally ridiculous. It is because it is Ola. She placed in the top 20, I think, in 2018 by qualified UK experts who measured her. They gave her 3 out of 15 in mock media conference. They gave her 2 out of 15 or something like that in the interview. So she didn't have the capacity, but this is always the problem, gentlemen. When a prime minister handpicks a president who's now going to handpick a police service commission, this police service commission has an accountant to select a commissioner. They have a financial consultant. They have no knowledge in law enforcement, and they handpick someone who didn't come in the top 20 by experts. So Ola Christopher has been imposed on Trinidad and Tobago. So we must stop trying to demonize Ola Christopher.
Gary, you were also handpicked and imposed to it. But we supported you. You were handpicked and imposed.
No, let's get to the facts. I'm glad you said that. I topped I got more points than everyone. I got 82.5%. I got the highest points over everyone who applied.
But there were 3 people considered ahead of you, not so?
You're not listening, Wendell. If you listen, take out the balises. Listen. The exam, there was 10 exams. I got the highest points in every single person. I annihilated Stephen Williams. I defeated Harold Phillip. All the people who applied for commissioner of police, I have the points. I got 82.5%. But yet again, this was a police service commission that was appointed by the UNC. That police service commission, when they got the 82.5% and saw that I got the highest. Stephen Williams came second with 76%. I defeated all of them. Mock media conference, interviews, background check, essays, operational report. Everything I defeated them in. The police service commission then says, we are going to bypass the points. We are going to bypass KPMG because we have the authority. So we are going to place Gary Griffith fourth. So they placed me fourth not because of the points on the points on the merit list, but because of their personal curry favor of who they felt should be commissioner of police.
But so you're saying that the UNC would have spited you back then?
I didn't say that, you did.
I just want my second question, Gary, is the issue of the state of emergency. And you indicated that it should be a last resort along that lines. So my question is, not my question, I have let me contextualize it a little bit. In El Salvador, under President Bukele, they have instituted a state of emergency. Now, in El Salvador, in 2019, their murder rate was 2,000 people murdered. In 2020, it was 1,000, 2021, 1,000, 2022, they instituted a state of emergency under President Bukele. It dropped to 459, and in 2023, it dropped by 70% to 159. Now, what El Salvador has done, and because their gangs were pretty violent, is they instituted a state of emergency and they arrested people, I mean, something like 70,000 people in terms of gangs. And they placed them in prison, and I think President Bukele was now they've gotten a lot of criticism from a human rights perspective.
Just like myself.
Because you have all sorts of issues going on in terms of the right, even though they have a state of emergency running. But he did things like mixing prisoners. He didn't separate gangs in prisons, stuff like that, like what we would do. And a whole series of things that were done. And of course, there is some criticism of it, but of course, the population, he has a lot of support from the population because El Salvador has now become less violent. So I'm contextualizing that in terms of what El Salvador has done, and the world is watching what El Salvador has done. Is there a play when we say now in a Trinidad and Tobago context? I'm not saying that we replicate that. I'm just giving that as an analysis of a state of emergency being used. In a Trinidad and Tobago context, you said it's a last resort. So my question is, are we at the last resort? One, or we're not there yet? And two, whether a state of emergency has value in terms of what would have taken, in terms of an El Salvador sense, and not necessarily about the human rights abuses, but I just talk, well, the alleged human rights abuses, let me put it that way.
Yeah, so again, okay, so quickly, as it's the value of the state of emergency, it can trigger. I mean, people figure that a state of emergency automatically means curfew. That is not true. There's no such thing as a limited state of emergency. You could have a state of emergency and you could have a curfew or don't have a curfew. The state of emergency, it allows, however, the input of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force in a greater capacity. But you know, we use this word state of emergency as taboo in Trinidad and Tobago. As I mentioned, there are countries called state of emergencies if they have a small forest fire. But we automatically, once you hear SOE, like, oh my God, it's a terrible thing. So Kamel Prasad Visesa mentioning that automatically triggered major concerns because, you know, we love to party, we love to socialize, we love to play football. It affects business as well. It is going to affect my business if there's a curfew. But an SOE does not necessarily mean that you're going to have a curfew. That is one. And again, the only value of the SOE is to bring in the army. What I'm stating is that we have to think out of the box. We have the anti-terrorism bill. It's here. This anti-terrorism act, it can do more than a state of emergency. This is what Ecuador just did. By labeling the gangs as terrorists, you now give the army operations to authority to go after them because they are now deemed enemies of the state. And it is true because these gangs have killed, 4,000 odd persons in the last decade. Every single citizen is fearful. Every single parent has to stay up at night to wait until their child comes home. The country is mortified. You have destabilized the country. The country is in total fear. Citizens are being killed in cold blood. You have assault weapons that can kill 35 people in 3 seconds. Nothing could justify that person being a terrorist more than this. So because of that, if we utilize this, there's no need for us to call an SOE. So again, what Kamel Prasad Visesa was alluding to is that this government finds a way not to make things happen. So they're going to find a way to discredit the gangs being labeled terrorists. They're going to find a way because remember, this is the same government. We actually had gang leaders actually going to president's house. They still get massive state contracts by this government, which I gave it to them. I told the prime minister, do not give gangs state contracts, and his reply is the gangs have a right to get state contracts or to apply for state contracts. That is the kind of madness we have with this government.
He didn't use the word gangs have a right to thing. He said any citizen has a right to apply for a contract.
Tomato, Wendell. So if a citizen is a gang member, he's alluding to the gang member has a right.
Well, the police had authority to deal with gang members, but he is speaking from the he was speaking, and I had agreed with him at the time. Because although I also agreed with you that people who are involved in criminal activity should not be given state money. But at the point in time, if you don't have the evidence to support it,
madness, Wendell, you know what you're saying? That's like saying the Al Qaeda. If you don't have evidence that this man, if you don't have evidence to arrest this Al Qaeda person, you have a right to build it to paint the White House. There's something called intelligence, brother man. No, Wendell, if you have intelligence to verify that this person is utilizing his funds to commit crime and to purchase more weapons to kill more people, you don't give him a contract because you're saying, wait, we don't have enough evidence to arrest him.
We're talking two things. We're talking about the application for a contract and we're talking about the actual issuance of that contract. That is two things we're talking here. And the Prime Minister was clear back then when he said you can't stop a citizen from applying. The issuance of that contract was left up to, and I had agreed at the point in time, was left up to the issuing agency.
Right.
In
And
a lot of cases,
I could rubbish that. I know you're trying to cover your boy.
No, I don't have to cover the Prime Minister. He's very capable. Trust me.
No, he's not. No, he's not. Wendell, he's not. Keith Rowley will never try to debate with me. He cannot handle criticism. He can't debate. He gets carried away. What he said after.
Dr. Rowley is the Prime Minister who has appeared in front of the media more than any other Prime Minister.
Yes, and then when he does it, he shouts at them, he buffs them, he's arrogant. So please,
but he makes himself available to be asked tough questions. We have asked him.
No, Wendell, he has something called a post-cabinet conference, and they never speak about what happened in cabinet. So he has a post-cabinet conference to bad talk the opposition. The man is a total failure. Come on, man. You call it a post-cabinet press conference, and you never speak about what happened in cabinet. Your post-cabinet press conference is, let me talk to the media to see what could bad talk now. The man is a total disaster. No, anyway, so going back point. He then said they have evidence to arrest the people, well, then they should arrest them. Which is basically, well, look, they have a right to apply, but arrest them if it is that you don't want to give them a contract. There's something called intelligence, and if intelligence could show that these individuals are utilizing their funds to purchase more weapons, hire more gang members, and put hits on other gang members to get their contracts, you blacklist them.
Yeah. Well, again, that was up to the agency to deal with, and I had agreed with that. You understand? Yeah. Because there's a famous picture. I don't know, the man, God rest his soul, he passed away, I think this weekend or last week, right? Of a then Minister of Housing touring an area in a police station, a police post. I think you were there, I'm not sure. But he was acting as Prime Minister, right? At the point in time. So all governments have done that mollycoddling, Gary. All.
And what I'm stating, Wendell, is just that it has to stop and it must end now. And I give the assurance to the country because this government, we have seen it. The contracts, I was the commissioner, it was littered. You give them $5 million contract to build a $50,000 box train. They're not using it to help their community. They're purchasing more weapons, buying more drugs, paying off more police officers to cover their drug blocks, putting hits on other gang members to get their state contracts. So the government is assisting and aiding and abetting the criminal enterprise in this country. When it has happened with governments, it started in 2006 by calling them community leaders. It ends now. I give the assurance to the country that in the incoming government, it stops now. I give the assurance that this government is not going to push the Anti-Terrorism Act. I am going to turn gang members into terrorists, and they're going to be treated as enemies of the state. The Defense Force will now have the operational capacity and the numerical superiority to press them, to suppress them, and if not arrest them, to neutralize them. This country is going to be cleaned up.
Have you officially linked or joined arms with the UNC?
No, but remember, since the local government election, when we got 190,000 votes, annihilating the PNM by 60,000 votes to the 130,000. Since then, what are you laughing at? So that's 60,000 annihilation of 60,000 more people, which means that for every 5 persons who voted, 3 voted for the UNC or NT and 2 voted for the PNM. That's bad licks. So with that, it shows that the strategic alliance works. It shows that third constituency working alongside another major political party will always defeat the PNM. It happened in 86, it happened in 2010, and it's going to happen again.
Okay. All right. Any more questions?
I have 2 questions coming up. Can Gary explain the FUL license renewal?
Yeah, sure. What is being done? This is something that, no, I agree with that. It is important. Gentlemen, we have about 20,000 persons with firearms. And many of them, probably a few thousand, have never held their firearm in 20 years. The only time they hold their firearm is to take it to the station to renew. That is not right. You must, if it is you have a firearm, you must be using it to be trained and be qualified to understand how to clean your weapon, how to have a proper shot, because you could shoot the wrong person, and knowing how to clear your firearm to prevent a negligent discharge. All these situations with negligent discharges in police stations because police officers, they don't do proper training on a range. And I realized that, which is why I got the FUL card with a chip to ensure that every single person with a firearm must go on a range at a specific time to make sure that they understand the workings of the weapon. Likewise, somebody might get a firearm 20 years ago and next thing, there's a difference in their finances, there's a difference in their domestic situation, their mental capacity. You must continue to make sure that the person is qualified to have a firearm. So that is not the issue. The problem lies is that they throw the card with the chip. So you go back to a paper trail. Going back to a paper trail means as an element for corruption. They then ask for a certificate of competence without a template to show what is a certificate of competence. What that is going to open the window for corruption. So the people who may have the capability to give it will now charge you, hey, just give me $1,000 here, take it, thank you. So it defeats the purpose of making sure the person is competent by not stating, you must be on the range, you must fire 5 shots, you must clear your weapon, we must see you strip your weapon down, let's see you clear your weapon, clean your weapon. That is not being done. You come, give a letter and you send it off. You're opening the window for corruption. Additionally, bringing in the Form 1 means that you're asking the persons to reapply. That is madness. It is similar to, as I said, you have a driver's permit and then the Transport Commissioner says, okay, I think everybody now must be retested. I want to see you be tested now to see if it is you're worthy to have a driver's permit, which there's nothing wrong with that. But by the time it takes that period, half of the people who applied, who have a FUL, will now be told, well, you have to keep your weapon in the station until the commissioner re-endorses your initial reapplication. It is total madness, but what it is again, going back, you spent 2.5 years with your Stanley John Jokey report. You brought your audit committee report that was full of lies, which is why you wanted to go to Parliament to read out the lies, because you know that's the one place that you could read lies and not be sued, like what you did with Emailgate. So the reports, massive well-oiled criminal industry, mass corruption, not one senior officer has been charged, not one firearm holder has been charged, not one firearm dealer has been charged. But the PNM is good at that. We are incompetent, we can't perform, but them thief, them corrupt, them is drink. That is what the PNM do. You say the same lie over and over. So that is what this is about. It's a desperate attempt now of bitterness, witch hunting, fishing expeditions. So now you're going to target and victimize the firearm holders because you couldn't find anything. Welcome. Well done, PNM.
All right. Well, Gary Griffith, thank you so much for being on the Power Breakfast Show this morning.